The film begins in an intense setting, inside an international airport in Anvers. A young lady named Jovahnna, who is the leader of the Panther crew, sneaked into the airport facility as one of their workers in order to commence a heist. Once she was all set, she informed the rest of the crew to commence the mission. Immediately, they disguised themselves as a SWAT unit, then they drove out of a container in cop cars. They began to drive to their destination. Soon after, they arrived at the hangar, and on getting down, they released a flashbang grenade, after which they held all the officers present in captivity. Some of the crew quickly went into the plane, while also breaking into the vault, in search for an artifact. While all this was happening, an officer in the control room saw what was going on through the surveillance system, so he called in for an immediate backup. Fortunately, Donnie found the artifact he was looking for, but just then more cops were already closing in, so he rushed back to join the rest of his crew, and they quietly fled the scene. Elsewhere, a sheriff known as Big Nick heard about the diamond heist from a local news while trying to have a drink at a bar. On hearing this, he felt he knew who to approach for this. In the evening, Big Nick drove to a strip club where a woman named Holly, the widow of the deceased Merriman, works. Big Nick then barged into her car, before he insisted that she follows a specific vehicle. Once they both arrived at the airport where the heist took place, Nick took her into one of the containers, trying to interrogate her. He's of the opinion that since Merriman has now died, she should tell him what he and Donnie did with the money. Holly, however, countered Nick by trying to blackmail him with their intimate video interview for him to leave her. She also revealed to him that she knows where the money is, and she will have to get a cut of $7 million, or else she would send the tape to his daughter and the necessary police authorities. Big Nick at this point seems to have any other opinion than to accept her terms and conditions. Soon after, she revealed the location to him. Back to Donnie, he is now in a business meeting with Jovahnna, so during their conversation, he gave her the stolen diamond to inspect. Once they were done, they proceeded to head into a building, heavily secured, but since Shava happened to be a wife to the chairman of the World Diamond Center, she helped Donnie gain access into the facility. As they talk and walk into the building, Donnie takes notes of the surveillance cameras. On the other hand, the cops at the checkpoint kept a close eye on Donnie, as they felt his acting in a suspicious way. They got to the receptionist, and after a thorough checking of his credentials, he was shown to his new office. Before the receptionist left, Donnie then requested if it's possible to lease one of the vault boxes because he has an inventory coming in, but he was told it's not possible, as all the vault boxes are fully booked. He then reports the issues with gaining access to the vault to Jovahnna. Unknowingly, someone was watching them from a distance. Meanwhile, days later, Shava had her subordinate test if the diamond was legit. Once she confirmed it was original, she took him to her office and paid in cash. After closing the deal, Donnie met with the rest of the Panther crew for the first time at their headquarters. According informed them that their next heist would be the biggest in human history, as this wouldn't be a smash and grab operation, but a robbery towards the World Diamond Center, and the estimated score would be around 850 million euros. She explained to each of them their specific roles for the mission. Soon after, Donnie is taken around to get familiar with the roads. Meanwhile, Big Nick boarded a plane, as he has been tracking down Donnie and his crew. Nick later got to meet with Captain Kane, who welcomes him before they all went over the plan to take down the Panther Mafia. Nick informed them about a credible suspect that might connect the whole dots, but they told him that they have been trying to stop him for over a decade now, so he requested to see the security footage so as to pinpoint him. Nick saw Donnie in the footage, but when they asked if it was him he was looking for, he denied, insisting he couldn't find the person in the footage. Later that evening, Donnie returned to his apartment, where he found out that Nick had made his way into his apartment. Donnie is shocked by this, but Nick insisted that he see it so they can both have a conversation. As Nick convinced him that he has abandoned the police force and is now a lone wolf, stating that he is broke, he's also sick of being a hunter and tired of doing the right thing with no rewards. Nick forces Donnie to let him in with the Panthers. The next day, Donnie introduced Nick to the leader of the Panther crew, while the rest of the crew observed from a close distance. Once the meeting was over, Donnie met with Shava in order to know if he could rent some space in her vault boxes for a few weeks. Due to the fact that he has an incoming inventory, after hearing this, Shava accepted his request but with a condition attached to it. Meanwhile, the Mafia who Donnie and his crew stole the red diamond from, devised a plan to retaliate for their theft. The following night, Big Nick accompanied the rest for the crew to a club where he met with the rest of the team, as it was the first time they officially met. After the pleasantries had been concluded, they offered him some drink. Soon after, Donnie began to feel high, making him eventually end up dancing romantically with Jovahnna. They both seemed to be attracted to each other. The dance got so intense that Donnie had to meet him at the dance floor, suggesting he slows down a bit, because Foco was already getting jealous. Foco couldn't stand the sight any longer, so he disrupted their dance. This leads to a fight between them, and they get kicked out of the club. Nick and Donnie continue to hang out together, bonding over their shared difficult childhoods. They are later taken by the Italian Mafia. The Mafia drove them to the docks, after which they were forced onto the yacht to the Mafia capo, where they explained what was stolen from them as it belonged to Octopus cartel boss, so the Mafia insisted they get it back by all means, or else they will be killed. Afterward, they are pushed into the ocean, while continued to argue. As soon as they arrived at the shore, Nick continued his yelling at Donnie for stealing from the cartel, because according to him, there's some boundaries. Afterwards, Nick arrived at his apartment, and after cleaning himself up, he called Donnie to inform him he still intends to go through with the heist. After the call, Nick was transported to the Panthers' headquarters with a blindfold, as they were yet to completely trust him. Jovahnna tells Nick that Marco, who fought with Nick earlier, and Vuka dropped out of the heist. They proceeded with their plans, and according to the security details of the World Diamond Center, only a person who is part of a law enforcement are allowed passage, so basically Nick was their only hope to get into the facility. Nick was provided with cover as a security contractor to compensate and accompany Wilson's guys. Donnie and Nick were able to infiltrate the WBC building using their assigned disguises, while Jovahnna and the rest of the crew were observing their movement through the camera on Nick's suit. Later, they met with Shava, so with her help, Nick gained access into the vault room. Nick figured he was being watched closely, so he didn't make any move yet. Moments later, Nick found the red diamond in Chava's briefcase. Although this whole process was just a test for the Panther crew in order to figure out how to bypass the security guarding the vault and plot on how best to go about the heist without being noticed. Once they were done and out, Nick quickly began to draw the exact location in which the diamond kept in. Meanwhile, Marco and Vuk have aligned themselves with a rival gang, the Tigers, to get back at their former partners. The next day, Nick accompanied Shava yet again to the vault, as Nick proceeded with a plan as he uses a spray on the surveillance camera guarding the main vault. Once Nick was back with his guys, they all waited behind and watched. Once the concierge leave the building, they began to prepare their equipments and weapons. Afterwards, they all got into their vehicles. However, Jovahnna didn't join them this time. Rather, she stayed behind as intel. The crew make their way into the WDC from the building next to it, while Jovahnna guides the guys by keeping an eye on cameras and security systems. The team smartly used an improvised pipe to gain access to the building, as each of them climbed carefully, till they all arrived safely at the roof of the WBC, while most of the officers on duty were distracted by a football match. So with the help of Jovahnna, she was able to make them invisible to all the surveillance systems. After which, they used a rope to make their entry, and fortunately, they narrowly made their way down the elevator shaft, and on getting down, they used a plastic shield to guise themselves, rendering them utterly invisible to the security camera as they carefully walked past it. They successfully got into the vault and began to unlock it. After this was done, they started ransacking the place in search for the diamond. Donnie figured out that the diamond isn't where Nick said it'll be, so he searched other metal shelves thoroughly in search of the diamond. Meanwhile, Shava and the manager were having a nice time at the bar, but all of a sudden, he kissed her goodbye, making a sudden decision to return to the WDC. Fortunately for them, Donnie found the diamond, after which they packed all the money, gold, and jewelries they could into their bags. It didn't take too long for the manager to get to the WDC, so Jovahnna alerted her crew almost immediately to hasten up. The manager headed straight to the vault, but before getting inside, he changed his mind all of a sudden and proceeded inside the elevator. The crew began to head straight back to the rooftop while Jovahnna directs them. They make it out of the building, but the bar used to climb across buildings falls into the street, leaving Nick stranded on the WDC's rooftop, which the security quickly noticed. Nick gets back inside the building and shoots a guard who seems to be wearing a vest to get out. Not long after, he jumped down from the balcony, and it was then he was able to regroup with the Panther crew, and they escaped using Donnie's getaway vehicle. Before driving swiftly into an underground garage, and on reuniting with Jovahnna, they transferred the duffel bags to her van, while Donnie peeled the paint off the car and also changed the plate number. Meanwhile, the cops were all over town in search for them, but they managed to stay under their radar. Back to the bank, the manager was in a tough state when he figured he had been robbed, as this was impossible to carry out. Back to Donnie and Nick, as they're heading on their exit route towards the Italian border, Marco and Vuk arrive with the Tigers, leading to a serious shootout and car chase. After a long extended chase, Nick eliminated the driver of the first vehicle, making the vehicle fell into a cliff. The Mafia in revenge shot down Donnie's car tires, and it was at this moment they were caught by Foco and his men, but fortunately and luckily for Donnie and Nick, they were ferociously shot dead. Immediately, Nick got down from the vehicle to find who shot them down, and they discovered it was the Mafia higher-ups. On discovering this, Donnie gave them back their red diamond, while the Mafia capo gifted them another getaway vehicle in return. A few days later in Italy, the entirety of the Panther crew reunited in a cliffside bar to celebrate their victory until authorities show up to arrest them, except for Nick, and the Panther crew got to discover that Nick has been with the force all along to capture the Panthers. Donnie and Jovahnna look at him with betrayal and anger as they are being wheeled away. Nearby, the Mafia capo was reading the local newspaper in a salon. It was there he saw the Panther crew had been apprehended. Days later, Nick goes to visit Donnie in prison and admits he was playing the crew, and they are now even, but says that their friendship was real. Soon after, Donnie is later being transported to another facility, but on their way, the Italian Mafia ambushes the convoy using chopper. They took Donnie with them. Once they arrive at their destination, Donnie is met by the Octopus, who was impressed with Donnie's work with the WDC. He felt Donnie's talents shouldn't go down to waste. He tells Donnie that he now works for them. While Nick was driving along the coastline, he receives a text from Donnie, who knows that Nick had a hand in getting the Mafia to break him out. Donnie promises they will see each other again, and Nick smiles. The movie then came to an end. Kindly subscribe for more recap like this. Thanks for watching and goodbye.